Everything with Cyclop starts down here in the bottom left corner, where you have the two synthesizers, or sound generation engines. What I'm going to do to demo this for you guys is just start with one of the initialization patches, the saw regimen, and I'm going to turn off the second synthesis engine, as well as both the filters and any modulation that's happening, so we can just hear the actual synthesizer. So the saw regimen is a combination of 7 different saw waves that are slightly detuned from each other for fatness. It's effectively a super saw oscillator, so if we turn this knob up, you see it starts to fatten out the sound. Now the sound's taking a long time to decay, so I'm just going to turn down our master envelope release knob. You'll also notice that there's a digitized knob here, which tears apart the sound by adding in some sample and bitrate reduction. If you look down at the bottom of the synthesizer, there's a master detuning and there's a unison knob. Simultaneously, there are 4 unison voices generated by one of these synthesizers, and you can turn the unison knob up to increase the level of unison effect. You'll also notice there's a convenient selection tool here where you can notch it down an octave or up an octave, so you can really dial in exactly where you want the synthesizer in your bass range. Next up is our analog sync synthesizer, which gives you 2 analog oscillators with sync controls. You can select different waveforms for the master and the slave, control the mix between them, dial in some nice sync. That's a good one to modulate. And we also have pulse width controls. The FM synthesizer is, as you may have guessed, an FM synthesis engine. You have 3 operators here. These are the frequency controls, and then you have ratio controls for each one down here, and you can set them up in series or parallel. The transformer synthesizer is one of my personal favorites. It combines kind of a wavetable and granular synthesis engine together, where you can select from different waveforms down here. And you have formant control, which gives you a very vocally effect. You can scan through in the position of the sample. And you have control over your grain size. They even have some special vocal samples that are already loaded in here that will give you some really great possibilities. The Spectromat is another favorite. It's more of an additive synthesis engine where it has 32 individual waveforms, and added up together they can make for some really nice fat sounds. You have a chooser down here where you can select the actual waveform of each one of the partials, from sine through square through sawtooth. The spectrum knob allows you to dial in the actual offset of each one of the partials by up to 5 semitones. The shape knob applies fairly radical EQ curves or amplitude curves over top of the individual partials. And the shift knob will move the entire thing up or down in your frequency spectrum. And last, but certainly not least, is the phase stressor, which is a very unique form of synthesis engine where it takes a sine wave and basically will massively modulate and distort it. It has the ability to self-modulate, and the symmetry knob controls the phase symmetry of the oscillator.